Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate, Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are premiering, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreon, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out to Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Alistair Main, Billy Highvault, Burn Fat Till My Stomach Is As Flat As the Earth, Chow Young Cat, Dank, Dave Rakia Gafford, David Wayne Foster, Edwin Johnson, Erwin Jennisons, Felix Hung, Fireball X, God Rockin, Henrik86, Jeranism, Joshua Balsimo, Kirsten Smith, Liam Nedrick, Life Is Short, Matt, Nagara Naibai, Qatar Craig, Reinhardt, Renee, Sally Ballis, Silver Umbrella, Skeptic936, Texas Mike, The Flat Earth Sun, Moon and Zodiac Clock App, theflatearthchannel.com, Tina Baker and Tom Hawkins. So a massive shout out of appreciation to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now we are joined by a fair few people in both G Plus and the Discord server. So a welcome to, we got Righteous Force and the one in G Plus. Hello. We also got 10th Man, I believe.
Yep. Good morning, all.
Hello.
Good morning, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. Good to have you all.
How's Discord looking?
Yeah, we've got Ryan in there.
Hello, Ryan.
Hello.
Good show yesterday.
With JLB.
Yeah, John LeBon. It just kept going in circles. It's just funny, man. I gotta listen twice.
And what circles? Clockwise or counterclockwise circles?
That was the funny part. I don't know. I need some directions.
He hung around in Discord for a while.
That's good.
Yeah, it was nice to see him there. I kind of like him too.
I like JLB a lot. I think it's great.
He actually said something fantastic, and then he backtracked. He talked about you mean like a transparent clock where from one view you see it going clockwise, the other view is counterclockwise because your perspective changes. And we all go, yeah, you got it. And then he goes right back to changing.
That's okay. I mean, at one part, I think someone said, he's just here to learn. And I'm like, no, he isn't. But I think he was. Because I was in his chat the other day.
That was me.
I accused him of using a logical fallacy. And then a couple of days or however long or later, he was here chatting to us. So you can only give the guy credit for that.
Anthony Riley.
Yo.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, but when he says he's here to learn and you take it at face value, which I did when I heard it, and then when it took 45 minutes just to figure out the most simplest thing, which was right there, and finally he admitted, but then he backtracked, he's not really here to learn, at least not on that point. I mean, it was Anthony who told him, well, what if you turn around? Which way is it going to go? And he just wouldn't admit it.
Stubborn.
Yeah, that guy was pissing me off.
Must have been something I said.
Nah, not at all. Do you think Ranty will grace us with his presence today?
Yeah, it's the holidays. He's got time. He's not as busy in the holidays, perhaps.
Yeah, he phoned me and Anthony with an interesting point earlier. Interesting only from this very vantage point on the debate talking about this subject. Because he highlighted a YouTuber that had talked about the standard rhetoric of the sky vacuum. You know, the emptiness of space. And you're like, that's just the standard rhetoric. It doesn't actually prove anything beyond someone like Neil deGrasse Tyson asserting the standard rhetoric with Coriolis effect. The fact that he'll confess to the Earth needing to turn underneath for there to be an effect is weird because they don't admit to it here. And in the same way, you seldom find someone on the debate or in the debate trenches saying, yeah, the sky is devoid of all matter, it's just an empty space, because the gas we breathe would fill that space. And that sentence is fast approaching if you're going to say things like that. But Ranty's like pointing out as though it's some sort of special circumstance where it's pointed out that the sky is supposed to be a vacuum devoid of all stuff.
So is he saying that it's going to soon, the tables will soon turn and they'll agree with us, or what's?
No, he's saying, look, this person's saying the sky is a vacuum. And I'm like, yeah, that's their rhetoric.
Right.
It's just weird hearing them actually voice it in those ways because they don't do it here.
Well, one of the reasons they don't do it here is because it's one of our housekeeping questions, and they came here to demolish it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
we're up front and center with it.
just sorry about that Discord thing with that Mr. Giggles guy, but he wouldn't leave me alone with his sun going underneath the earth.
Oh, you're talking about Mr. Giggles?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's alright. I said it was alright.
Sorry, you'll have
You're
to fill
new
me
there,
in.
so I'm generally okay with new people.
You'll have to fill me.
Well,
Oh,
Mr.
there was bickering back and forth between him and Mr. Giggles, but it was in the Bible section. Paul was like, "Why are you guys taking this in the Bible section when it should be in the, you know,
Who's doing
discuss
the
the shape of the
dishes?
Earth section?" So,
And I totally didn't know where I am at that point in Discord, so I was like,
yeah, because when you join, you don't have permission to post in the live stream. I have to
no,
fix
it's
your
like
role.
he was telling me to go somewhere, and I was like, you're not telling me shit. I didn't
Okay.
realize what he's talking about.
Yeah, understandable. I got you. It's all good.
So he was claiming that the sun goes down underneath the earth. And I asked him, well, have you observed that? And he continued to claim he has. And then he went to ask me, why do equatorial mounts track the sun the way they do? And I was like, who gives a crap?
What did he
Observe
say? Equatorial,
mounts.
pre-assuming what?
No, those like automatic telescopes that you focus them on a light source and they like turn after it.
Yeah.
And he claimed that the sun goes underneath the earth. And I was like, so you've observed that? Is that your naturally observed phenomenon, sun going underneath the earth?
So the telescope can see through terra firma and see it underneath the earth? Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, something to that effect. Like total
Yeah.
nonsense.
So the angular resolution gets so small you can't see it anymore, but the telescope says it went under you.
Yeah.
I get it. All right.
Yeah. Rest in peace, logic.
Look, all they got to do is prove that we're rotating and that you can have gas pressure next to a vacuum, and they win the day. How long have they had?
Yeah. Pack up and leave.
Yeah, I mean, let's go on to something else.
But the funny thing is that he claims that this is a naturally observed phenomenon that sun goes underneath the earth. And I was like, okay.
See, he's presuming a globe.
Yeah. That's why I call him a retard, because he did it like a million times.
Well, if he did it a million times, then you weren't pre-assuming the retard statement.
Yeah. I was just describing my naturally observed phenomena of his retardedness.
Well, the guy yesterday, John LeBon, the stars are moving, but for some reason they think the Earth is moving. Now, the star trail pictures, photography, would show the direction of the Earth moving as a streak, while showing the star's rotation in the circular streak that it does. So if the Earth is moving and the stars are moving, we should see the streak of the Earth movement crossing at part of the circular movement of the stars, and we never do.
Yep, absolutely.
That is 100% impossible if the Earth is moving and you're doing time-lapse photography, because it catches everything that's moving, especially if it's got a light on it.
Yep, you get like spiral patterns in your time-lapse photography if it was the case.
That's of the stars, but if you put it over a freeway and you see the back side of cars and the front side of cars, you get white and red light streaks.
Yeah, but it depends on which side of the road you're standing.
Oh, gosh. We'll go back to covered wagon days.
I call this guy the Star Whisperer. Like the stars speak to him.
I got something for you guys. I don't know if Righteous, I don't know if you were on there yesterday and heard that, but I got Zanuck to admit that from the bottom of the Mariana Trench to the top of the ocean, because there's a pressure differential, that is a vacuum. Think about that. Was you on there, Righteous? Did you hear him say that?
Yeah, but I think what he's missing, what Zanuck's missing there, is that the differential has to be significant enough to be causing something, right? Now it might cause something, but if he's going to say that that's a vacuum, it's not devoid of matter, is it? Hang on, isn't it deemed as below 1 atmosphere? The difference has got to be less than 1 atmosphere for it to be considered to be less than 1 atmosphere for it to be a vacuum.
I don't know, but it was just he was equating a vacuum with differential pressure, and we was talking about the sea levels, and he considered that a vacuum because the upper levels of the ocean is lower pressure.
Well, you know, when you've got like 6 layers in that density tower, and you got the cherry tomato in the middle, right? The question that they asked me is, well, why don't all the layers merge into one layer and become like pressure equalized? And the answer is density, right? They won't accept that density is the reason. They want to apply the equalization no matter what principle. They ignore the density issue or the mass that causes the density issue. And what I realized is that fucking hell, I've lost my trail of thought. It'll come back to me. It'll come back to me.
So, Rumpus, no. Zanuck is saying that differential and pressure is a vacuum. Is that how he defines a vacuum, Paul?
I've got it.
Correct.
Yeah, in his mind, differential pressure is a vacuum. So that's why he could say that if you're at the ocean and you're under the water, right just at the top of the ocean, that has one pressure. But if you go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, which has a different pressure, that, because you're at the top, is more of a vacuum than the bottom of the Mariana Trench. That is a vacuum to him.
Well, he can't go and define things the way he wants it to fit his model. He's got to define things what the words actually mean. And that is not a vacuum. That's just a difference in pressure.
So I've got what I was going to say. When they asked me, when you have 2 different pressures next to each other and one goes into the other, like gas pressure goes into the vacuum, for example, or heat goes into the cool, they always say to me, right, well, why can't you put that in maths? And I'm like, who cares about maths? Which is still my position. But then they say, well, you can't even explain it. Why does it do it? And it's a law of nature. It just does it. But they don't, because we don't really know what we're saying, what we're describing. They want us to pin a word to it so that they can use it against us. And I found out that there is actually a word to describe this movement of this act, this nature, and it's called the pressure gradient force. It's actually a thing, and they've got maths behind it. So the movements from hot to cold or whatever, they call it a force. It's the pressure gradient force, and it has maths. So immediately now, what we're describing when we see hot going to cold or pressure going to non-pressure or the layers in the pressure gradient being formed, that force we can measure, and we now have the maths for it, and they just don't like it. So the force that we can calculate it with something called the pressure gradient force. So just bear that in mind.
Can you share that to your screen or share it with us? Something else too, along the same lines. How do you? Only way you can prove that pressure or that gas, so to speak, has weight is it has to be inside a container, but also that container has to be pressurized, which actually increases the density of the air. Think about that for a second. So relative density is still in play even when it comes to so-called weight, because you have to increase the pressure inside a container to even notice that there's weight to air. And if you remove the air from a cylinder, it becomes lighter, which is what means it's less dense. So
Yeah, but Paul, if you put this pressurized container, if it's just like normal pressure, normal atmospheric pressure, like 14.7 psi, if you pull a vacuum on it, then you'll see how much weight is inside it.
if you put it in a vacuum,
we all know when you have any kind of air pressure, no matter what it is, and you lift the membrane that separates the section where the air pressure is and to the other section where there's a vacuum, it fills the available space. You're not going to get away from that. That's not ever going to be contradicted. They can't ever demonstrate anything but that. For them to even demonstrate the vacuum, they have to give us a container. Because now you got the pressure outside the container that they pulled the air out of to create the vacuum inside the container. So they've lost this one. They're just scrambling now. All they got to do is show that the Earth is rotating by going up in a hot air balloon or helicopter and let China come to them. That's all. You would think that could be done if the Earth was a ball spinning.
Yep.
If you look on my screen now, gents, I've got the pressure gradient force. Just type in pressure gradient force equation in Google, and then it brings up like a definition. It says whatever this is, EDU. I'm not sure where this EDU is, but you can also transpose it with horizontal pressure gradient force. So they always say, well, why does it not go left and right? Why is it always up and down? Well, weather is an example of horizontal pressure gradient force, which is relative density. It causes pressure variations laterally. So that is lateral displacement of pressure. But if you click into the lead link, it just gives you the formula for it. If I zoom in a little bit, you'll see it says pressure gradients equals 1 over air density is change in pressure over distance. So it's the change in pressure it's the variance in the pressure over distance, and that gives you the pressure gradient force. So we do seem to have it. It's just they don't put it in the context of gases and liquids or solids, because presumably it would lead too many people into asking questions about the atmosphere and stuff to do with gas pressure and stuff in the atmosphere and in the vacuum. If you limit it to weather, then or tins of cans, then it keeps you away from the bit that they don't want you in, and they start talking about it where they want you to start talking about it.
I wouldn't even go here, Anthony, because look at all the times the Globers come here using some kind of math formula like P
No,
over.
I'm with you. I agree, but I just wanted to let you guys be aware that there is maths for it. There is a name for it, pressure gradient force, and it is a thing. It's just that they don't apply it in the context of space. They just apply it in the context of tin cans that are in a container.
No, I get what you're saying. They're using math for something here that requires a pressure, and they describe it. And then when you say, well, how come that can't work with your gas pressure next to a vacuum? Well, then they don't want to talk about it. But the point is, rather than go, I guess this was my point. Okay, don't give me a math problem or a math equation. Demonstrate it. This is where they fall
I agree.
apart. This is
agree.
what Tesla said, that if the quote is attributed to Tesla and is correct, they've substituted real science experimentation for math, a conception. You can make it say anything. Look, they got it saying an R value. Look, they got it saying how far the sun is. They got it saying everything. The only problem is when you ask them to demonstrate it, they can't. So we need to get back to real science, which is demonstratable, repeatable, observable, empirical. That's what empirical is. But they can't. They have to give you this big chalkboard with all these equations, and then the average guy says, well, they must know what they're doing.
Yeah, I just wanted you to be aware that there is a name for the force that does these things. I don't know why the pressure is pressure, isn't it? It's caused by the uneven distribution of pressure, but they have got a name for it.
Yeah, they also use circular logic. They basically say we know the air has weight because of pressure gradients, and we know the pressure gradients. Wait a second. We know we have pressure gradients because of weight. So they just go back and forth.
Yeah.
But atmospheric pressure and gas pressure is two different things.
Well, next time a baller comes on, I'm going to tell him he's showing me his BS in math. His higher education, he's got his bachelor's of science in math, but BS means something else.
But it should be like so obvious now because we basically have it explained. You know, we have pressure, and we have like this density and buoyancy stuff, right? But
Well,
you gotta
go ahead,
go
Ryan.
on.
No, go ahead. Finish it.
I really didn't have anything to say.
Oh, well, and that's why I got Zanuck once, because every time they use like the differential pressure as a wing, you know what I mean? Or you have the lower pressure on top of the wing and higher pressure on the bottom of the wing. Well, but is there less stuff above the wing than there is below the wing? No, there's the same amount of stuff. And even Zanuck admitted that. Again, I'm like, so that's not a vacuum. Well, then yes, it is, because it's pressure differential. So they're equating two things that have very different. You can have it even under gas law, the same amount of stuff with less pressure. Gas law shows that. So you can't equate the two. You know what I mean? I don't know how. I don't understand why they keep. I guess they have to keep doing that, but I don't know. I'm just talking out of my butt now, I guess.
Yeah, well, they're desperate, so they have to cling to every.
We've all stuck our hand out of the car moving at high speeds with a flat palm, and we've tilted our palm up and down, and we've seen what happens. That mirrors an airplane wing. Is he saying that I'm in a vacuum with my hand? I got that stupid.
Well, there's a vacuum behind your hand, but there's higher pressure in front of your hand. That's what he would say. So,
So I have a vacuum where there is air.
right. Basically, that's what he's saying. Because
Okay,
obviously
so
there's a higher.
he can be excused to the loony bin at this point.
All they're trying to do, Tent, is saying it's a low pressure system without a contact.
Why doesn't someone roll down that window in the ISS, stick their hand out, and see if they can have the same experience down here as they do up there? I mean, up there as they do down here.
They're too
What's he
busy
gonna?
trying to get in the holes.
So what's he going to say there? There's a air up there behind the hand. They're scrambling.
Well, at least whatever they come up with, you can still corner them.
Ethics a container.
Yeah.
Well, and here's one I brought up yesterday too. If we're losing gas every day, so much tons of gas every day, and it's the weight of the air that is causing the pressure, then wouldn't the pressure be lessening as the top layer is starting to bleed off so many tons per day? And also, wouldn't that be an exponential occurrence? Because the more it happens, the less pressure. It's just an exponential movement. So that doesn't make sense either.
I
So
liked
even
when they
say-
make that. I liked it when you made that point yesterday. That was good.
Should contribute to the whole country.
You're coming in rough, Flatsoid.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Including the whole pressure gradient, not just the top there.
Can't really make you out
Oh,
on
you're
what
still
you're saying.
cutting out a little bit.
Well, how did they say we get pressure in the first place again?
Oh, they don't.
Yeah, they don't answer that question. They can't.
Well, I think Nathan's pinned them down a few times when they say the V, and he says the volume. An area, the A for the area. They like to sidestep those, right?
You know, the more I hear this argument about gas pressure without a container, the more I like think about how Huey was right that this is like one of the best arguments. Because in a way, it's kind of like really simple. But like the more we talk about it, it's like simple, but it's like easy to overlook. But the more you like discuss it and participate in it, the more obvious it becomes. Like how good of an argument it is.
Yeah, I've asked this question like almost 5 years ago in the first Facebook group. Like, why doesn't all the air go in the vacuum of space? How is gravity keeping it down here?
Yeah, it's not.
And it's strange because even when I was like younger and I was like playing like, let's say, video games, like a space video game or something, and you travel to another planet and you enter in the atmosphere, it kind of like, I thought about it for a bit, like how is that possible? But because it just presented to us like it's being possible, you just kind of roll with it, and you forget to use your, I don't know, logic on it or something.
Bless you.
I think somebody here is allergic to bullshit. He sneezed.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, how dare you, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live. There's also a PayPal, Patreon, and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by the 10th Man, Flatsoid, Paul Hall, Ranty Flat Earth, Righteous Force, Sleeping Warrior, and the one in G+. Very good to have you all.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
Also got a whole bunch of people in Discord as well, so welcome one and all.
Hooray!
Hello.
Hello. Any signs of Earth
there.
curvature?
Not from Apple Valley.
Not on this flat plane.
Haven't you heard, Nate?
Not from Kickbite.
Haven't heard what?
The curvature of the lens, not the curvature of the Earth.
If it's
Curvature
flat,
of the lens. Yeah, I'll
if
go with
it's
that.
flat, it's curved.
Oh, have you got any sound bites yet? Have you trimmed any bits out yet?
If it's curved, it's flat.
Got to be curved to be flat. It's got to be curved to be flat. Oh,
I'm doing a video on it. I'm doing a rap video. I'm working on it right now.
Excellent.
So, Ranty, are you saying the new curve? Hang on, curve is the new flat?
Yeah. All water is flat, according to Rumpus.
Or flat is the new curve.
Flat is the new curved. That's correct. That's the reality of the situation. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, I should tell you, there is no axis to rotate upon.
No rotation spotted on this plane.
An almost full Discord server. Anybody in Discord? Any proof of axial rotation? Any proof Earth spinning?
Any clockwise or
it doesn't quite
anti-clockwise movement?
it doesn't quite match the plate tectonics theory, which has the continents as plates floating on top of liquid magma. Because with the spin of the Earth, you would expect these plate-like continents to migrate toward the center, perpendicular to the spin, like if you've ever seen one of those tennis balls covered with water and you spin it, the water migrates to the center and kind of explodes outward. That would be what would be expected to occur with the Earth's continents on the magma. They would be expected to migrate toward the equator and be oriented around the equator of the ball if they're floating on magma and the Earth is spinning.
Fair point.
But most continents are arranged antipodally from the north to the south, and they're not concentrated around the equator.
Just one note, was that a scientific theory?
Talk about plate tectonics.
Uh-huh. You said it's a theory. Is it a colloquial, mystic Meg theory, or a scientific, backed by experiment theory?
Not really. I mean, they haven't found this sea of magma that the continents are supposed to be floating on. It's just theorized, but they really don't find it when they do sound scans. They find extremely thick continental quote-unquote plates, and even when they use plate, they really don't find a quote-unquote puzzle piece plate that has a defined boundary. They just assume that where volcanoes are and tectonic activity is, that there's some sort of plate boundary there, but they really don't see this puzzle-like action between all these continents that their model demands. So most of it's theoretical.
Colloquially, theoretical. Mystic Meg theory.
Pretty much.
Fine. That's brilliant. Yeah, I agree. Ring of Fire is what you're describing. Yeah. Spot on.
Yeah, but it's not around the equator.
Hold on, just 1 second. The one I think there's... Go ahead, Beyonder.
I was just saying some of the continents are clocking in at 300 to 400 miles in thickness, and they say there's even more down past where they were able to sound with tomography and CT scans. They really don't.
Perfect moment to ask any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth? A chocolate.
A chocolate. Only in movies.
Good
and
one,
in
guys.
cartoons.
Thank you, Beyonder, by the way. That's a good point.
Fancy.
Well, if you look at the work of Victor Schoberger, I think he said that there were two fundamental motions you find in nature. You find explosion and expansion, which tends to be a hot friction force, and implosion and impansion, where the thing basically implodes on itself, and that tends to be cooling and reduce friction. So if the Earth was this hot ball in the center, you'd expect it to be exploding and expanding outward. It would not be stable, basically. It would tend to, break down. For it to be stable, it would have to be implosive and impanding, the opposite of expanding. So that wouldn't be expected if it was a hot ball. It would be expected if it was, exploding like a bomb. It wouldn't be able to maintain the heat. And they try to maintain the heat of the thing via gravity. It's kind of like magical at that point.
I was more referring to the 300 miles of each continental crust when asking, because we get answers in the sort of order of, no, we've only dug down about 8 miles. So, where are you getting this 300-mile crust from? But there we go.
And did you mean implosion? Not
Yes.
impan?
They use it for
okay.
supposedly they use it for UFO technology. They use implosion instead of explosions. They use implosion by
things can implode.
funneling the water or whatever they're using for fuel through various spirals that get tighter and tighter.
Vortex technology.
Yeah.
Okie dokie. Any evidence that you can have gas pressure without a container? Oh, sorry, the one. Did you want to add something? Sorry.
Oh, I forgot. It doesn't matter.
No worries. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
Nope.
Oh, what you got there, Paul?
Yeah, doesn't look like that's gonna work.
Well, I was trying to show something we talk about on here. Obviously, if you watch as I'm doing this, I'm adding particles constantly, obviously. But if there was a way to cycle this through where there would be cycling the molecules inside the container, where the molecules are coming out, the pressure would be greater at the point of production. If you see it, if you look around, it's less pressure around. If there's a way for me to cycle these, I could show you better, but of course the simulator doesn't do that. But I think that's, if I could show that the higher concentration down here by the hose is showing that higher pressure.
Are the walls on that container?
Yes, there are actually. Yeah, there is walls.
Where's the walls on Earth?
Where's the walls? They're those white lines.
Yeah, they're on the glow model. There's only one surface, and it's only, it's open. It's like more like a ball instead of a cylinder or a something along those lines. So
yeah, where's the walls though?
They're up and around the gas mostly.
I think he's asking in regards to the heliocentric reification of a sphere without any containment, as opposed to your demonstration of a 2D Micwestian depiction of gas pressure inside 4 white walls. Pixels, in actuality. None of this is really gas either, almost called you Anthony then, Ranty. They're just pixels, not really gas at all. It's amazing, isn't it?
It's a model. Come on, Nathan, you know what it is. It's a model, admit it.
This is a model. Get it off, pseudoscience.
This is their model too, by the way. It's not our model. We don't have a model, right? Anyway, I just was demonstrating, showing that higher pressure down by the source of the gas than there is where the gas is not produced. That's all I was trying to demonstrate. But yeah, it doesn't even stay around there. The gas is escaping, and that's the thing about even them saying the gas is escaping in the heliocentric model. The gas is not no more gas is produced. It's just exchanged. So if we're losing gas to so-called space, then how we got gas to begin with?
Well, in this model that you're looking at now, it has an error message. If you look where the gas is escaping, there's something written in yellow.
Oh, it says return lid. That's what it says. Okay. It says,
return lid.
What, to stop it escaping?
Error.
Yeah, stop it escaping, right, Ranty?
Yeah. Error. There's an error here. We're losing all the gas. Put a lid back on it.
Okay, so this is a great demonstration of gas pressure definitely needing a container for the gas to press upon. Is there any demonstrations of gas pressure without a container, given that the fundamentalist religious zealots who oppose us believe the sky is a vacuum and endless expanding space for the gas to fill?
Well, there was a glober, his name's Puppy, and he actually took Mick Westian's 2-space simulator and removed all the heat from his from the simulator and was able to create a pressure differential and the gas stayed around the sphere. It sounds like he's agreeing with chemo. Wouldn't that sound like to you that heat is a container if you remove all the heat?
Well, no,
honestly,
you can't reach.
How can you remove all that?
You can't get to absolute zero. So to assert that you can stop the gas from moving freely and randomly in all directions at high speed would be to assert that you can reach absolute zero. Well, you can't.
Right. Well, that's what his argument was. He debunked my video by saying, "Oh, if you remove all the heat, then you can do it."
Is that the circumstances? Okay. Is that the circumstances that befall us here on Earth?
Do what now?
Is that the circumstances that we find ourselves in, with no temperature, with no heat, almost, or in this instance, at absolute zero? Is that the situation we find ourselves in?
No, we don't find that. And there's this huge thing up there that creates a lot of heat. So yeah, no, we don't exist in that place.
If I may add, in their heliocentric model in the beginning, while gases are forming and water is forming on the surface of the Earth is very hot. So it's volcanoes everywhere. That increases the gas dispersion. So it doesn't make sense.
Right, indeed. Yeah, good point.
Well, and also though, you can't have liquid water without pressure. Every vacuum simulator in the world, that every time somebody uses a vacuum simulator, proves that.
Yeah.
You got to have existing pressure to have liquid water. So where do you get the pressure to start with? Where do you get it from to begin with?
What happens?
And it sounds like they're kind of.
Hold on, whoever in Discord's talking, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, it sounds like they're assuming that the vacuum is at equilibrium with the pressurized system, but most of the time, when you have a pressurized system next to an open vacuum, they equalize. You don't have a vacuum over here with a pressurized system over here, so it's like they're assuming that it's at equilibrium when most of the time, most vacuums need to be maintained by containment and are not at equilibrium with their surroundings. So it's kind of like they're trying to have their cake and eat it too.
Yeah. It's a violation of natural law is the sky vacuum. Outer space is completely fake. You can't have a region without any pressure and gas pressure next to it not dispersing into it. It violates the laws of entropy. The gas would fill the space.
And it gets even worse because fire can't burn if there's not sufficient pressure. And that includes oxygen-reinforced chemical fires. They don't burn if there's not sufficient pressure. So many problems.
Well, there's an anomaly.
Hold on the one. Go ahead, Mel. Say again.
Well, because I live in Australia, this is the only reason why this is relevant to me. We were told that there's something called an ozone layer above Australia. And because everybody was using these, they're called fluorocarbon, because people were using them in air fresheners and things like this, apparently that blew a hole in this ozone layer, and that let more heat from the sun through, and then more Australians were getting burnt. So they even changed the SPF from SPF 15 to 30. It's quite strange, but apparently above Australia, there's basically a big hole in the atmosphere.
They suggest that the UV is not blocked because of the.
Wait. Let me ask him a question. How do you have a hole in a gas? Please explain.
Well, that's what it's just like that was the example I was going to make with, because I've got to be real world and simple. So riding a bike as a boy and a teenager, you get a puncture in a tire. Once there's a hole in that pressurized system, the air leaks out, doesn't it?
Yeah, but
That's
what he's
true.
saying is,
I think they're BSing us. I think they don't have any satellite coverage down there, and they're covering up the lack of real-time weather data and satellite coverage, since they're not, covering what's going on down there with an ozone layer. I think they're just covering up their lack of satellite coverage
sorry to cut you off.
What's really going on with Antarctica.
Sorry to cut you off. Repeat your question. Everyone's whistled straight past that, Paul. It's genius. Say it again.
Oh,
wait a minute.
I was just
How
saying
do you
that
have a
God,
hole
is your name
in a
Paul?
gas?
Whoever's just started talking, is your name Paul? Clearly not. Go ahead, Paul.
How do you have a hole in a gas? Please explain.
If I was Brenda, I was going to suggest the same way you can have it in a donut.
But what Paul's asking for, and I'm
Only
showing.
way you could have it is by a whirlpool.
No, that's
there'd
water.
be a hole in the whirlpool of gas, but that assumes that there would be some sort of whirlpool down there.
No. What he's saying is, look, if we've got this area here and it's a gas that's apparently a layer of gas, right? How do you have a hole in it that stays as a hole? So, in other words, the gas will leak out over here and leak out over here, but in this particular area, there's going to be a hole in the gas, when by nature gas is unbonded. There's nothing but holes between all of it. But apparently there's a hole in this gas layer? How is that possible? That's
Some might say buttholes.
Go on, whoever it was in
Hairspray.
G+. Go on, whoever in G+.
I think that's the whole.
I mean, there's two.
Hold on,
I
Meryl.
think it's only.
Hold on, Arwin. Bloody hellfire. Go ahead of the one.
I think that's the hole in the whole heliocentric model. It's full of holes like that, non-existing ones.
But I just want somebody other than me to acknowledge the genius of Paul's point.
No, you cannot have holes in a gas.
I asked that a week ago. I said, wait a minute. When I was in high school, I was told we can't use aerosol cans and shit like that. They had to change all that because we have a hole in the ozone layer. And it's like, wait a minute, how the hell does that work? I didn't think about it then, but now I'm thinking about wait a minute, how do you have a hole in a gas layer?
If I may ruin the joke for a moment, it was really a figure of speech. What they meant is that all these gases would supposedly interact with the ozone and neutralize it into something else. They're not literally suggesting a hole. It was just a figure of speech so children would get it.
No, they were actually referring to a hole.
No, we've actually shown.
No, it would be neutralized, not a literal
Sleeping
hole.
Warrior, hold on. Just go ahead, Sleeping Warrior.
I saw satellite imagery that they told us was a hole as a kid. We used to see it frequently.
I was going to say, I was definitely of the impression that they made it quite explicitly clear there's a hole, and even said where it was over. I'm sure they said it was over Antarctica.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
It's over Australia. It's over
I
Australia.
want to say one
What
thing.
they're suggesting is that it was a part where there was no ozone, but it would be something else because it was neutralized chemically.
There was
That was their suggestion.
the so-called claimed satellite pictures of it in recent years showing how it's shrinking, and they were actually showing a hole.
Yeah. But
Yeah, it was a hole.
But hold on.
Another time.
Hold on.
when
Just let me
gas
address that,
doesn't
Chocolate.
act
Hold
like
on. Just one
gas.
second. Just 1 second. So the pictures of the hole in the ozone layer came from the second law of thermodynamics violation known as the sky vacuum or outer space
No,
2.
not going with this. No.
Why am I getting
Red herring.
interrupted? What's going on? So the satellites of this hole in a gas layer came from a fake place then?
No.
Yeah,
It's
you're
a whole.
right.
Not what it was.
It's
This
over
is all
fucking
straw man.
Antarctica.
Fill us in then,
Well,
Arwen.
Merle, I think.
What are you
Hold on.
talking about, Arwen?
Hold on just 1 second,
It's
Chocolate.
not a literal hole. It was a contrast. The contrast of supposed normal ozone and not normal ozone. It's not literally a hole. Nobody thought it was literally a hole.
Doesn't matter what it
We
is.
heard
That's
that.
what
Hold
I
on.
told people it
Chocolate,
was,
just 1
Arwen.
second.
Straw man.
Hold
This
on.
is useless. We don't need this.
Okay, fine. Back that, please,
We don't
Arwen.
need what?
We heard it
Arwen, what
twice.
do you
Let's hear
want
it backed.
about?
Where's your citation to show us that that's what they actually meant?
No, that's what they told me in school when I inquired because I was very interested and concerned.
But that's no more credible than Merle saying he was told it was over Australia. How is that any more
Let's take a
credible?
poll.
It's the
I was
same.
told it
It
was a
doesn't
hole.
matter if it was there or not. They never suggested there was a literal pressure gap in the gases.
Yeah, we've just had 2 examples of people saying that
Do you
that's-
have an example where they do say there's a pressure differential? I don't think
No, it's
so.
not a pressure differential. It's a missing
Well,
part of
that's
the
the
ozone
hole,
layer.
right? That's a hole. That's what you're suggesting.
No,
now, that
they
it's
said
a
hole,
literal
and
hole.
apparently there's been photos, Arwen. I don't know what your problem is, other than you being told something different.
Photos of gas, really.
Well, yeah, they show, yeah.
Yeah?
So, hold
No,
on, Arwen.
pictures.
This is very
Pictures.
pertinent. Just all calm down for a second. Yeah, Arwen. So when they show you the blue marble, yeah, they show you a photo of gas clinging to the outside of a ball with black background claimed to be a vacuum. So yeah, they're more than content to show you that crap claimed to be taken from a fake medium. And in this instance, there's people who are claiming, they've not cited anything either, I'll side with you on that part, but they're saying, no, they said they had photos of it from space. Well, here we go, somebody's on the case. Who's on the case? The one. Here we go. Oh, the one. Go back. There we go. Oh, what do you know? That looks like a hole to me.
Yeah, well, there's no pressure differential.
In the
it is
Hebrew,
just designated to be other types of gas.
Hold on, Lemonbird. Just 1 second. I'll get to you next. Go on, Owen.
Yeah, what that is not a literal hole. It's just another spectrum. It's a spectrum of like, oh, this material is here. Doesn't mean there's no pressure there. That is not a pressure chart. It is a supposed material registered thing. That is what it represents. I'm not saying that is real. I'm just saying nobody claimed there was a different pressure. There was a pressure differential, that there was a literal gap. It was just not the presupposed types of gases that block the UV radiation. That is what the claim was.
Can I ask you a question, Arwen? Can you possibly entertain the fact that the rest of us in school...
I don't give a shit about your
I'm in the middle
pressure.
of a sentence.
I don't give a shit. I'm out of here. I'm sick of these red herrings.
No worries, Owen. No worries. No, that's fine. That's great.
No, don't leave. Ranty's got a competition on at the minute.
Bye-bye. Okay.
Yeah, fine.
My question was...
There you go.
Okay, Arwen is telling exactly what he experienced, but the rest of us are telling our stories, and he's having trouble accepting it because his is not on top.
Yeah, to Owen's credit,
well, I'm going to say
just 1 second. I just want to run that, and then it's Lemonbird. So, to Owen's credit, rather than sitting here and going round and round in circles and reasserting his incorrect position, he's dropped, and more power to him. Anyway, Lemonbird, you go next. Go ahead.
Well, I go with the Hebrew cosmology, which shows a what appears to be a ring of Antarctic ice, not a continent. So what the hole that they may be talking about may just be a hole in the zone of satellite coverage that they can't wrap around a fake CGI model. I'd probably go with that, conspiracy theorizing or whatever, as opposed to an actual hole in the ozone, unless there's, some sort of vortex where the gas is being, like sucked into the earth or whatever. I think it's more a hole in their satellite coverage before they, wrap the flat land around a fake CGI ball.
What satellite image?
The satellite imagery on the Antarctic ring before they wrap it around a fake globe model.
Hang on. The one, put up your pictures again. I want to see if those are real photographs.
While you're doing that, quick shout out to Andy Zemmer, who says, quote, "The Space Force will become the 6th branch of the US military," end quote. Popular Mechanics, 17th of December 2019. Rolling on the floor laughing. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Andy, is it Zemmer? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at these images. They look like they don't look real. And to say that, and to say
an
that
argument from ignorance, that.
Okay, I'm just telling you that these do not look real. They look like artist renderings to me.
Yeah, I do tend to agree.
This is a genuine question. Does anyone here have any idea of the potential containment of what it could be? Because I think some of us by now, after some time of looking into this, could be willing to accept that there could be some kind of, it doesn't have to be a dome, it could be anything. It could be a pyramid, it could be a cube, it could be a tent, who cares? But does anyone have any idea on what this potential containment could be? Because it seems pretty sure with the housekeeping that
I know one thing it has to be. I know one thing it has to be.
Hold on, Paul. Go ahead, Anthony.
To answer your question directly, I think we've got to accept that the limitations that we have as conspiratards are limited to a P900, a compass, and a general consensus of accepting that we're not on a sphere. But to ask us what it actually might be opens the door to a shitload of conjecture that we'll all be bound to forever, because if we say what we think it might be, there'll be hate videos as a result of it. No one's going to do that. Let's just accept that we're limited by what we've got, we're limited by no money, and we're limited by no public consensus or no public support for questioning the narrative that we're on. So let's not suggest what it might be. Let's just point out how it can't be what we're told it is.
Okay, hold on. Paul, go ahead.
That's fair.
Hold on just one second, Mel. Go ahead, Paul.
The one thing the container has to be, it has to be denser than the substance it's containing. That's all.
And also, we have laser-guided star formation, where they shoot lasers up into the sky to excite the sodium atoms up in the atmosphere to get star effects. One could argue that they're exciting the sodium atoms that are within the firmament dome, which would point to it being borosilicate glass if you wanted to go, conjecture-wise down that sort of rabbit hole. Otherwise, if you want to assume, say, that the meteors or chunks of it that have broken off, you could analyze those for substances and, retroductively apply that to the firmament if they're coming from said firmament.
There you go.
But
hold on,
like
hold
you
on,
say, it's
hold on.
conjecture until
Mel,
we can
hold on.
find the barrier itself.
Oh, he's gone on mute. What the hell? You're just giving him a perfectly decent answer and he's gone on mute. It's like server deafened himself. Okay. I thought that was a very good answer. At least you've got at least some shred of evidential base for your extrapolation in that regard. Certainly not something I would claim, but fair enough. At least you gave him an answer, more than he'd probably got out of any of us.
Well, one thing I would say is that the dome that everyone is shown, that the idea that the dome is probably half the diameter of the Earth, to the ceiling of that, is absolutely preposterous. I was doing some calculations today, and with Tony actually, the idea that the dome is that size with the stars sort of like mapped onto that. That's why the Globers will come around and say, well, how come you can't see Polaris from the south? If we live on your map, your flat map. And obviously that wouldn't work with the dome model in its current form. To have something contained, it would have to be much closer. It's more likely to be something the height of what's called Neil deGrasse Tyson, when he says that when Baumgartner jumped out of the balloon, he said, how are you going to see Earth curvature from just this height, Well, you could also apply that to the stars, so if there was a firmament and if there was some kind of dome barrier or something, it would have to be much, much lower down. And in that respect, then everything else would fall into place. You'd have the containment and you'd also have the star trails, etc., all forming in line with perspective that you wouldn't be able to see Polaris from essentially halfway across the plane, basically.
Shout out to Bad Puppet, who says, is sulfur hexafluoride up there officially? Cheers. Sulfur hexafluoride's man-made.
Yeah, because I mean, what's the diameter of the Earth? Go on, sorry.
I was just saying, if it's some sort of dense medium like sulfur hexafluoride to, get the ground running on what sort of, thing that could go with the model is up there. Maybe there's some sort of super dense liquid fluid, up there as the waters above. If you go with, some sort of, biblically based cosmology with the waters above the firmament or whatever. But the thing is, you wouldn't see Polaris over a flat plane if you're too close to the flat plane, because by the rules of perspective, you see stuff that's physically above your eye line converge down toward your eye line, the middle of your vision. And you see stuff that's physically below your eye line converge up like the train tracks toward the middle of your vision, but no further. You get a zone of optical compression past which stuff, goes no further, because if it did go further, you'd have an error condition where stuff that's physically above your eye line would appear to be below you and vice versa. And at that point, you would not be able to make spatial relationships or sense out of your world as opposed to what's above or below you. Now, since you're so close to the flat plane, no higher than like 6 feet if you're an average-ish human, you'd only get even visual treatment for the 6 foot zone above and below your eye line, and anything past that point would set into that point. And so with Polaris being, say, 10, 20,000 miles away, it would eventually set into that point if you're too close to the flat plane. So over a flat plane, you would get very quick optical compression, increasingly after the even visual treatment of 6 foot above and below your eye line. And then the rest of it would just, set into that point dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, we're conditioned to look at things like this sort of dome model, and it really frustrates me. And it sort of, in many ways, you can understand the arguments from the Globers that, if they're in Australia, they're going to see Polaris up here. It's bloody obvious.
No, they're not. They're not. It gets that far away. It compresses into the horizon.
Yeah, no, but you're not looking obviously at what I'm presenting.
Yeah.
Which is this model,
I am.
Polaris up here. They're going to see
but
it.
you're looking at this in Muppet vision. That's not how we observe our world, is it?
Wait a minute. When you're presented with this, and you've got a diameter of the Earth of approximately 8,000 miles, right? The height of this ceiling is going to be approximately 4,000 miles, right? Which is retarded. Absolutely retarded.
But we have to accept the diameter they give us.
Have we ever been? Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I mean. From all the calculations that we have right now, I mean, we don't even know how far this plane extends. It could extend for infinite. It could be in an infinite plane. But just on these calculations alone, and knowing that we've not even gone up to 200,000 feet, which is essentially 37 miles, when you work all that in, over 200, it's 200 to 1 in height versus in diameter. And to put that into some kind of perspective, I was working this out with Tony. I mean, even this gap here, I mean, if this was the plane on the bottom and this was the 37 miles up this black line, you can see how close it is to the plane. And if this was here, if this little circle in the center is Polaris, when you get over to this point in the center, you're never ever going to see Polaris because it's so low down on your horizon. But what will happen is the further south you go, you'll start to see the south celestial poles.
Well, the south celestial pole may just be a visual phenomenon, but it may not be an actual, point. If you notice how things tend to approach the horizon with great enough distance, and think about the concentric rings of star rotation around, say, the central North Pole on the flattish model, expanding outward toward the outer southern section, you're going to get bands of rotation that are increasingly large, covering increasing distance, and that would approach the horizon. Now, with these bands of rotation, if they're going with the North Pole's rotation, they would eventually appear to bend down toward the horizon like the train tracks and appear to optically reverse. Because stuff that's far enough away tends to approach the horizon, and so you may have a zone of optical reversal. But if you walk up on those southern star trail bands, if it is perspective, like the train tracks, it would tend to open up to you like a book, and you would get a more actual position when you're closer to it. So they would probably straighten out and reverse back toward the north if it is an optical phenomenon.
Well, one thing I do want to say is that I am not saying that this is what I believe. I'm just I look at this model here and it makes me puke, essentially, because we don't know. But essentially, you can't imagine something would be like this. It's far too great, and there's so many issues with this, in my opinion. Now, Tony, you said, oh yeah, well, they'd see, Polaris, they wouldn't be able to see it from Australia. Well, of course they would. Of course they would.
No, that's not true, Ranty. You're looking at this in Muppet Vision, right?
No,
but you don't see the world in Muppet Vision.
What they've done is they've put this dome up, giving you the impression that this is at least 4,000. This is all coming from the Flat Earth Society, where they say that the sun is like 3,000 miles away, and that's why they put this dome up this high, And when they do that and you put these calculations in, Globers are going to turn around and say, well, yeah, there's a real good possibility you should see Polaris from Australia.
No.
Well,
no.
You look at the methods that they use. The flat Earth methods that I've seen appear to be much more scientific because they don't assume that the Earth is a ball moving through space, giving you a baseline of millions of miles for the triangulations that they use for stars, which would dramatically throw out the distances and increase them by a huge factor. They go by the solar rays where they touch down on the Earth and do a simple triangulation without assuming that the Earth is moving millions of miles through space. And by that triangulation, you get a sun that is no further than 3,000 to 10,000 miles away, if that. That scientific method of geometric triangulation, as it were, seems to be more in line with Occam's razor, more minimalist, and make much less assumptions. So I would go with that sort of approximation, especially since Robotham detailed how sailors at sea would only get a shadow if they were 30 miles out from under the sun. Because assuming that the
rays of the sun are coming straight down to form shadows, and you're only getting a shadow when you're 30 miles out from the sun, that would imply that the sun is no more than 30, 32 miles in diameter. Because if you only get a shadow, when you're under, the sun, but not directly under its rays, and you're getting it 32 miles out, that implies that the sun is about 32 miles in diameter. And so based off of those sorts of principles, if light travels in a straight line, you can make these sorts of, safe predictions that are much, more in keeping with Occam's razor and make a bit more sense.
Can I ask a question pertaining to Polaris? Why did the Globetard say it's 2 quadrillion miles away? Is that because of parallax, the lack thereof?
People say that because they assume it's moving through space.
No. They say it's
assume
that far
that
away,
Earth was.
No. Listen, they say that based on its brightness and how much brightness fades at different locations. So basically, if it's bright and it doesn't fade very much in different locations on the Earth, they consider it to be close. But if it's dim and it varies from different locations on the Earth, they say that it's trillions of miles away. It's all to do with its brightness and how its overall luminosity from different locations.
And how were they able to equate that to? And what method did they use to validate this, Sleeping Warrior?
Well, it's based on spectroscopy, isn't it?
So what? So they can't prove it.
No, they can't prove it. It's an interpretation based on. It's like when Nathan did his transsexual spectroscopy. If he explains that through, it's a really good way. It's a really good way of picturing why there's problems with this concept that they call spectroscopy.
Well, we've all seen the images from the drone as the sun is setting, as it appears to be setting to our perspective. It's just going further away. Dirth has it on his channel. And then other times, your own eyes at the seashore, you see it setting. And so, but when you zoom in and the optics are there in some kind of camera or telescope, it just seems to be going further away. So perspective, I think, is so important here.
Yeah, that's why we shouldn't use Muppet vision. Muppet vision removes perspective.
And perspective is so much more complicated than we've been led to believe.
I agree.
It seems that the idealized perspective conditions would be if you would be attained if half of the object is above your eye line and half of the object is physically below your eye line, and you maintain vision on the object as it disappears while looking straight through the middle of the object the entire trip when it is disappearing from your eye. You're not going to have that if you're close to the flat plane with 6 feet or less below your eye line and most of the object above it. You're not going to have even visual distribution with an object that's staying at a certain elevation. And also, with that being said, with like a 3,000 mile high sun, you'd only get even, visual treatment if your eye line was piercing, say, this 32 mile in diameter sun right in the middle, and you were able to maintain that for the whole trip as the sun goes away from you. But with you being close to the flat plane, you'd only get even visual treatment for, basically 6 feet above and below your eye line. And if you've ever held a coin in front of the moon, you can see how a small object in the foreground can cover a dramatic bit of what's beyond it if the angular ratios are equal enough to block out the object. So the 6 foot in elevation visual zone that you're treating evenly, up and down, you could think of that as the coin. It would block whatever's beyond, and whatever's beyond would tend to set into that point very dramatically, because that 6 foot up and down zone would probably cover huge swaths of this object that's trying to set, in its preferred, zone thousands of miles away. If you were, covering the sun, 3,000 miles up evenly, up and down, it wants to go into its true vanishing point, but the vanishing point that's available that's even is only 6 feet up and 6 feet down from your eye line. the rest of the extremely tall object or far off the ground object is going to need to work with that limiting factor.
We shouldn't also get distracted with this idea that we have to also come up with explanations as to why we can actually have gas pressure inside. We don't need to do that. I mean, that may come when we have more information. We can only speculate right now. I mean, what people are doing right now is speculation, but the simple facts of the matter are we cannot have gas pressure next to a vacuum without a container.
Shout out to Theo Megaworty. He says, we do not see in Muppet vision, and we do not see in one-point perspective. Both of these are only possible in graphical representations. Thank you very much for the super chat, Theo. Really appreciate your support.
That's why I was saying to Ranty, like, we shouldn't depict it in that way because we don't see that way. Nobody can see that way because you've got to be on Mars or whatever to see it that way.
This is why I was showing that example. It's like that's the example that the Flat Earth Society have put out. That's the example of some flat earthers run with, and they show you this dome and they try to put you in a dome and they try to say this is the model, and then the globers can turn around and they can say, well, okay, if that's the model, then okay, then this is an issue. Polaris is now an issue.
That's why we're making no claims and pointing out how it's impossible that we have gas pressure rather than saying how it's possible. And like you just said, let's not make claims. Let's point out how it's not possible. Because at the end of the day, what can they expect, right? They don't even have a working model themselves, but they claim that they do. When we're putting this out, they start talking about it, can't demonstrate it. And then they expect us to have, based on our, 2, 3, 4 years worth of research, questions and whatever, they expect us to come up with a plotted map of the whole world that works. Let's be honest, we don't have that level of expertise or wisdom or knowledge or resources or power or anything like that. Why should they be expecting us to come out with all this in the short term? They shouldn't. It's unrealistic.
Yeah, and let's not replace models with models right now.
Start about 80 to 120 miles up. So that implies that if it's some sort of chip off the old firmament, it would begin around there. And we can show them videos of rockets which appear to be scraping something at a certain height. You can hear kind of like a bell sound like a gong, like the rocket is hitting some sort of metallic
That's the yo-yo. That's the yo-yo anti-spin device that they deployed on the rocket to stop it from spinning. That's total. I don't know where that came from, but it was fixed that in about 2016. That's not. Let's not say that it's scraping the dome. It's the yo-yo anti-spin device that was deployed to stop it from spinning.
But there's another video of another rocket that appears to have sparks as it appears to scrape something at the top. And you also have elves and sprites which appear to go up and hit some sort of barrier at a certain altitude, like it's hitting something, like some sort of solid barrier. And then you have sundogs and rainbows, which, have an attractive explanation if, say, the sun is beyond the firmament and shining through some sort of curved glass surface or some sort of curved solid surface. So it does appear that we have a couple breadcrumbs which lead to some sort of barrier, firmamental containment, or whatever. And also the Earth has a resonance frequency. And resonance frequencies, when you're talking about that, you're usually talking about hollow cavities that are vibrating with some sort of, frequency. And that has a very satisfactory explanation with some sort of firmamental containment covering this hollow barrier of Earth.
Well, it's obvious when NASA shoots their rockets for show, they go vertical for a while and then they go horizontal the rest of the way. So,
that's Coriolis.
Yeah. No, that's just that they can't go much higher. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it is that. I've heard them say that it's Coriolis because the Earth's turning underneath the rocket, and that's why it appears to be curved.
Well, listen, this is why I'm saying, this dome model, that's like it's got a ceiling at 3,000 miles high. I mean, that rocket could just go straight up and it would disappear from people's view. The reason, and that's why Polaris is an issue with that model. So I hate that model. The flat Earth model with the dome on it just doesn't work for me. It makes more sense that because we've never actually gone up to a certain height. Nobody's gone that high. Nobody's gone 50 miles up. Nobody's done that, right? Even these rockets don't do it. So why place a ceiling at 3,000 miles high when we've only ever been to 50? Let's say.
Well, I think
Well,
Anthony
first
said it best. We
principles.
don't have the funding. We don't have the funding. We don't have the time. We don't have all of what it takes to provide the correct answer. We just caught them lying about the old answer.
Yeah.
Well, it is important to see what the other side's answers are to some of these questions. The only thing that was 3,000 miles high was at best the sun. The sun, moon, and stars may be within the firmament, with the firmament touching down much sooner than that. Some sort of firmamental containment would possibly explain the lunar waves that we see, where the moon appears to be behind what appears to be a wave of water. So the firmamental containment would separate our zone of air and, whatever, ether or whatever, from this zone of the moon being, behind some sort of zone of water, if there was some sort of firmamental containment to keep us back from whatever is, giving us the rippling waves of the lunar wave. And also, we do have an encyclopedia from 1950s that refer to a dome at 13,000 feet. The ballers respond by saying that dome is not, what you might think as a firmament, but a geological of, hump curved land, like a dome, a geological dome, as opposed to like, a firmament dome. But we'd have to look into this deeper.
Hold on, just 1 second, Anthony. Just 1 second. Did you hear what 10th Man said to you?
What was that?
So he pointed out. I won't repeat it. I'll just give you an example. So, do you know the story of the Emperor's new clothes?
I've heard of it.
There's a point in the story where a little boy or a little girl in the story points at the naked Emperor and says he's not wearing any clothes. Now, everyone else has bought into the lie and patting him on the back and just going along with the narrative and saying, yeah, beautiful threads, man. Yeah? Now, we're at the situation where, as 10th Man points out, we're just pointing out that we've been lied to and how we've been lied to and what we're being lied to about. And in this example with the Emperor's new clothes, you're saying, well, you, in this example, are like the boy pointing out the Emperor's not got any clothes on. But is it now your responsibility to become a seamstress and make him some new clothes, or solve this problem that it politically might cause him, or embarrassment as the child that points out the lie? Is it suddenly your responsibility to come up with the answers for the problem that the Emperor's now finding himself in?
The answer is no.
There's no responsibility for us to explain what the sky is, explain how we have gas pressure. We know that the necessary antecedent is a container, but beyond that, and the assertions that are made that it's a vacuum, which we debunk, there is no more work for us here. Now, as much as it might, the people are like, wow, suddenly we're in the driving seat here, the world's our oyster. Well, yeah, it is, but speculation is fine and well, but it doesn't really get you anything. It's mental masturbation by comparison to actually going out and validating what the hell the sky is, which we're not doing, let's be honest. But what we can definitely do is point out that it's not a vacuum without making ourselves look, without causing offence, foolish for wild speculation. We can still point out the lie. The child can still point and go, he's got no clothes on. But it doesn't mean that all of the diplomats in that town come to the boy, circle him and go, what shall we do to solve this problem? Are you going to make him new clothes? What clothes should he wear? What's he going to tell all the other townsfolk and the other high-ups in this regard now that it's obvious? Now that you've pointed out that there's a lie being told, what are you going to do about it, little boy? I don't know, he's just not wearing any clothes. Look, he's been lied to. That's it.
I had somebody on Discord that I blocked in the end because when I was trying to explain to him, he said to me, we don't have gas pressure next to a vacuum. Nobody has ever said that. And I said, yeah, they have, dickhead. It's part of your model. 14.7 psi at sea level is next to the vacuum. He said, no, it's not. It's next to 14.6. So it's basically like the flat earth position, right? And at the end of the day, I said to him, listen, what's stopping the 14.7 from equalizing into the 14.6? He said, the 14.6. I said, okay, well, what's stopping the 14.6 equalizing into 14.5? He said, the 14.5. I said, okay. I said, so are these solids or are they gases that are able to freely move in all directions? And he said, they're able to freely move. And I said, right. I said, so if they're able to freely move in all directions and they're all moving at high velocity, quoted to be around about 500 meters per second, what stops them from immediately equalizing? He said, well, it's the pressure, isn't it? It's the atmospheric pressure. And I said, right, but they don't have any mass. And we know that Pascal's law states that the gas pressure exerts itself against the walls of its container, Earth, in all directions randomly, space. So there's nothing physically stopping them apart from what you think is some kind of atmospheric pressure. And he said, but if that was the case, then the atmosphere would immediately burst into space. I said, yeah, you're right. It would, wouldn't it? Well done. You've just debunked your own model. He said, yeah, but it doesn't do that though, does it? And I said, yeah, that's because your model's not right. And he didn't realize, rather than say and accept and acknowledge that he's just debunked his own model, he instantly shouts at me for pointing out whatever I've just said, and then said that I must be wrong. And I'm like, you've just demonstrated why your model's broke, because there's nothing stopping the 14.6 and the 14.5 from all bursting into space. There's no physical barrier.
What he's actually saying is, no, the sky doesn't burst into the sky vacuum because I believe the sky is a vacuum. That's his justification.
A bit like JLB yesterday.
Well, there was a very slight but very important mistake that we made. We assumed that the Earth was, acting like it's in equilibrium with the vacuum without the pressurized system of the Earth, typically flowing into a vacuum. We acted like it was at equilibrium when nothing in the model says that it is. Gravity is supposed to somehow maintain this equilibrium next to space, but that might be a bit of an assumption if we don't see gravity forming balls or orbits.
Doesn't matter. Gravity's not overcoming entropy. Doesn't matter what their model says. Entropy's a law of nature. The gas will fill the available volume. And if the available volume is space, then the gas is going to want to fill it. Entropy's going to increase. It's a law of nature.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what their model says. Doesn't matter about gravity. Even in their own rhetoric, gravity's not overcoming entropy. So it doesn't matter what they say about gravity. That's why me and QE used to say, have Newtonian and Einsteinian conceptual gravity at 200% effect. Still not going to hold the gas pressure here. Entropy still increases. It's a law of nature. Doesn't matter about your pseudo-Riemannian Mickwestian two-space or your Einsteinian bending of concepts or your Newtonian debunked gravity. It's all for nothing when it comes to entropy increase. The gas is freely moving in all directions randomly and wants to fill the available volume. That's the end. Space is debunked with that. It's the end of space. Sorry, fundies. What were you going to say, Ranty?
I was going to say, it was a bit like yesterday, Tony was explaining this cognitive dissonance of the gentleman he was debating about gas pressure. Well, JLB yesterday came in and he couldn't concede that he was wrong when talking about the direction that the stars travel, east to west, and he called it clockwise or anti-clockwise. And
he couldn't understand the perception twist.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, I felt like that was all games. He was purposely not, listening to it again yesterday, he was purposely not saying east and west. That, I don't know what kind of game he was playing, but that's what he was doing.
It's called troll. It's called troll.
Yeah. That's what I heard at the end of that.
He was trying to save his ass.
Yeah, save the embarrassment. I'm with you, the one. I agree.
It was embarrassing, though, if that's the best the Globe has.
Well, it is the best the Globe has. They have to obfuscate points that they're losing.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream, then stay tuned, as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you're watching this live on the Nathan Oakley 1980 channel, then this is where we bid you farewell. A huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G Plus panels for making this live show possible. Another massive thank you to all of you smashed the super chat. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on the premiering stream, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Email yesterday. I've just literally, it was a reamer saying how much of a retard I am, this, that, and the other, and I just wrote back to him saying thanks for your opinion. I just didn't address anything he said. He's never ever on topic. Sorry, Ranty, I've not seen your message. I'm in the middle of kicking ass.
Hey!
Guys,
read my message
about the space. Did you saw what I posted in Master about the International Space Station? found a video that's 7 years old of somebody exposing how it's fake.
We only caught the middle and end of that. ISS and someone with a video 7 years old proving it's fake. That's the only bit I caught of that.
Yeah, that's what basically said. Like, while we're on the topic, just I found it recently. I don't know if anybody saw it. It's like 2012 August was posted.
Oh yeah, there's been moon landing fakers and flat earthers and all this sort of stuff for a very, very long period of time. When I was doing interviews, one of the first questions I asked people, or the first question was, when did you find out? How did you find out? And in most instances, most people went back to 2015, similar sort of times to me. But in some instances, like Charles, Flat Earth Math, he was doing this, if you can call what he does this, back in 2006. So he regaled me with some of the stories of the people who were on the circuit back then doing the same thing. I also asked him if he knew if any of them were still around in any capacity whatsoever, and he said no, absolutely none of them. So, to my knowledge, the person who's oldest in this subject matter is actually Charles, Flat Earth Math. I know he's a anti-flat earther, but nonetheless, he's been in this subject and has encountered people on our side of the fence back in 2006. To my knowledge, that's the earliest date. I know Math Powerland describes preceding that date in some instances, but certainly in terms of his actual journey that we can see, it seems to slightly, Charles seems to slightly predate Math Powerland. So there we go. But again, you can see it in old clips from 70s TV shows, albeit with the controlled opposition Flat Earth Society narrative being punted. There are certainly people of that ilk on mainstream TV back in the 70s and 60s and so on.
Still on housekeeping.
Say again, Ranty?
No. Have we still?
Yeah, I actually had a flat earther in the close family that was a flat earther for years. He's well into his 70s now, so for most of his adult life, he would bring the subject up at gatherings, family gatherings, and he would just get laughed at. Obviously, that was everyone's sort of reflex at the time, including my own. But yeah, he's one of the OG flat earthers, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's nice. I heard that story earlier.
So with the graffiti in South America, I remember early days seeing people putting out snapshots of graffiti, and it was old. The earth is flat graffiti. So you think, well, yeah, people have obviously been aware of this for a while.
Yeah, did you hear?
And I couldn't even get a word in today. Oh well, I guess I'll have to wait till tomorrow.
Go on, Babs, what did you want to say? We're still recording.
Well, this is going out to a limited audience. I had a really good question I wanted to ask Quantum Eraser if he's here, but I'll just do it tomorrow.
Fair enough. Save it for the live show.
Make sure you write it down so you don't forget.
I don't think he's here anyway. I haven't heard.
Any? Come on, we're not finished housekeeping. We need more housekeeping questions.
Yeah, we're finished with the live show, though. I mean, yeah, as much as fun it is to do the housekeeping, yeah, same vein as Babs, right? Save it for the next live show.
Yeah, since we're speaking, since we're talking about housekeeping, what you'd usually ask a question like, do we have any evidence to the distance of the sun? And people would reply with, there's no evidence. I know that that's not what you're implying, but for the people that are watching, they may think that no attempts have been made to measure these distances. Because when you say that there's no evidence, then it sort of implies that there haven't been any attempts. Whether the attempts are correct or not is a different matter. But to say that there's no evidence is a big deal, I think.
It's correct.
Well, what evidence do you think there is?
Well, let me just state it before we get into... You can have that argument with him, I don't mind, but I'm going to declare it as fact anyway. Yeah, there's no evidence for the distance to the sun, Babs. None. Evidence is synonymous with proof, by the way. They're synonyms. So,
yeah, otherwise it's a claim.
Yeah, clues I'm not interested in.
Okay.
I think we leave the word measured out of that purposely too. I think that's the way the question was formulated, because there's no measured distance to the sun. They got assumptions all day, but where was it measured? Right? You could say that they might have tried, but where's that?
About radar ranging, and what about
Okay,
the
one at a time.
Morley
Radar
experiment?
ranging. So radar ranging, travelling through a fake medium, will brush aside the fact that the radar's being blasted out into a fake medium, and we'll just say, how do they know how long it should take? Oh, well, they're going to calculate that based on the presupposition of a heliocentric world, and therefore how far they assume it is when they fire out their radar is going to dictate when they look for the return data.
How do you know that it's based on a spherical Earth?
Because they tell you.
It's based on 1AU, and 1AU is the application of Kepler's third law on interplanetary motion, and that's where the it was Christian Huygens, and it was the other guy. Basically, Christian Huygens made the assumption that Venus was the same size as Earth, and Eratosthenes assumed that Earth was a sphere, and then calculated the radius and the circumference from the assumption that it were a sphere. Well, those two assumptions were the basis for what the 1AU was calculated from. So once you know the ratios, and then you have an assumption that Venus is the same size as Earth, and Earth has got a calculated size, assuming that it's a sphere, you can then plot out the whole of the solar system.
Yeah, there you go.
But hold on, hold on. There's a conclusion though. But when it comes to then, hold on. When it comes to then firing out anything, you will know the return time frame that you should be looking for the return data based on that model. So in other words, if you're bouncing some off Venus, you're going to, what is it, 8 minutes that they say it'll take for the return signal or something like that? Well, that's based on how long it would take in the heliocentric model of spheres. That's why they're looking at that particular time frame.
Yeah, what happens if
so you couldn't
the
just
region
shoot
that they
a
call
radar
space is
signal
made of
to the
jelly?
sun or
Hold
the
on,
moon?
Ranty. Go ahead, Babs.
So you couldn't just use radar ranging, regardless of what the shape of the Earth is. I mean, because all you're doing is just sending a signal to the sun or the moon. Why can you?
Yeah, but what's the medium it's traveling through?
You can use the radar ranging, but you're looking for the reflected ping that's bounced back. But where do you look for it? How long does it take for it to come back, assuming that it's a tangible physical object, right? It depends on how far away it is. But you don't know how far away it is because you haven't got. So even if you assume that Earth's a sphere and you assume that Venus is right, it gives you a distance based on time. But when you're looking for that ping reflection, that signal, it's that weak that nobody can decide whether or not you're looking at a reflected signal or is it just ambient noise that they're amplifying the shit out of, like Sean Hufford did in his audio guy claims against me. So the point is, the ping reflections are so subjectively interpreted based on your own perception that it's totally subjective, and I can look at it and go, well, yeah, it is, and you can look at it and say, no, it's not, and no one really knows whether it is or it isn't because we don't know how long it's going to physically take for that reflection to come back from an object that we can't confirm to be physical.
And moving on from that, what happens if the medium that it's traveling through isn't a vacuum? What happens if the medium that it's supposedly traveling through is made of jelly?
I knew he was going to say bloody jelly.
I want to say jelly.
Then you either
Aren't you just measuring the time that it takes to come back? You're not determining what the medium is. You're just measuring the amount of time that it takes for the signal to come back.
They're presupposing it's travelling through a vacuum. That's his point. He's contrasting vacuum with some other medium that it could be travelling through. But their rhetoric says medium vacuum.
Let me answer his question short and succinct. The answer to the question is they will either get the ping back at a different time or they won't get the ping back at all. So what they're looking for is ghosts.
Now, Sleeping Warrior, you had that quotation from the guy at JPL who insisted it was something while the other people said it wasn't. Remember that?
The guy that had to convince himself of what he was seeing and then had to convince somebody else.
The point is, can I just make the summary for Babs? The point is it's open to interpretation, and in the instance that we specifically detail with Venus, because it's not ground zero, it's not assuming R, but it gives you the application of Kepler's third law to get the scaling. Well, in that example, the interpretation thereafter, when they're firing something and claiming something's coming back, is completely open to interpretation, to the point where Bob from JPL says, I can see it, And everyone goes, really? Yeah, definitely. Look, there it is. I don't see it. It's there in the noise. Oh, okay. So you're definitely convinced you can see it? Yeah, of course I am. Oh, okay. So is that interpretive or is that cast iron empirical? It's interpretive. So it's open to interpretation. And the interpretation that they tell us about is very, very sketchy. Notwithstanding the fact that they're assuming Earth's a sphere and all those distances that they should be looking for the return signal in. The return signal they get is also very sketchy and open to interpretation and has been interpreted by somebody very biased from JPL in that particular instance. It goes on and on with all the others as well. There's no difference in terms of how they're going to extrapolate the data and decide when they're going to look for the return signal. But in the, let's say it's 4 minutes or 5 minutes, just for nice easy round numbers, in the 5-minute period after you've sent it off, how do you know that it didn't get returned within the first tenth of a millisecond? And you're there sat 4 minutes later looking in the noise? Well, you don't. But because it's open to interpretation, they just interpret it around their model. Of course. That's all they ever do.
I thought the signal was just sent to the
whole
sun
thing's
and they waited for
bollocks.
it to come back.
The whole thing's bollocks because they're sending it through Narnia.
Yeah, we covered that.
Oh, John.
Okay,
Hello,
so
John.
if I'm a flat earther and I want to know the distance to the sun using radar, I'm not presuming anything. I'm just using radar to determine how long it's going to take that signal to come back.
Why
is that invalid, QB?
Hello,
you're
my
right.
mic working? What's the
Why
sun?
is it invalid?
You can't confirm what it is that you're bouncing the signal off.
And you cannot confirm that it
Testing,
will bounce.
is my mic working?
Yeah, your mic's working.
Mike's working.
Yes, Quantum, it's
Pointing it at the
working.
sun, what else would it be bouncing off of?
It's baloney. Did you just hear what I just said?
I did, but you didn't say why it was baloney.
Because, yes, I did. Because you're traveling through Narnia. This is baloney.
No, Babs was referring it.
The signal supposedly going through the vacuum of space. There is no vacuum of space. The whole thing's a just so story. Bye-bye now.
No,
That's not what I'm
Q,
talking about.
that.
I'm saying if I'm not assuming that there's a vacuum of space and I'm aiming this radar at the sun.
What the hell?
Why can you just measure the signal that comes back?
Assuming that there is a vacuum, assuming that there's a vacuum of space, that is.
That's not what he's asking. Everyone,
that's the problem.
whoever's interrupting.
Are you
That's
not
not what Babs is
listening to what I'm
asking.
saying? Are you not
Babs
listening
is,
to what I'm saying?
hello? Babs has got no just so story. He's just saying, if I get a radar and point it at the sun, why can't I just get a return signal and measure it? That's what he's asking.
Because you need to know how long it's going to take for the return signal to come back.
One more thing, you need to know first that you are being able to bounce the signal from the sun. How do you verify that?
And you would also need to know what medium these things are going through, and you don't.
Don't you already
And
know
you would
how long
also
it takes
need to
radar
be rich.
to bounce
You
back
would
to
also
Oh, hold on, Babs. You're getting answers.
You would also need to be very, very rich and have the most sophisticated flat Earth radar system that notices when it's birds or anything else and avoids them and only comes back with the sun.
No, listen. Now, there's two major issues. One, the vacuum. That it's already blown up just with that. I don't even have to say anything else, but I will. Free space path loss. Figure it out. So why don't you move on to something that's got some meat on the bone?
So
Not assuming a vacuum.
Hold on. He's talking about measuring the inverse square law when it comes to the actual power of the signal.
Shit, I should have called it. I knew that's what he's talking about.
Right. The amount of power needed in terms of how much you can send out and how much you'll get back. Well, admittedly, this works as a debunking when you're assuming these millions and trillions of miles away. But regardless, if you don't know, how do you know how much power to use?
Exactly. If you don't know how far away these things are, then how would you know how much power you need?
You don't.
That's based on a presupposition by saying that it's a certain distance and it's not going to work based on inverse square law. That's a presupposition.
Okay.
What the fuck?
Hang on.
Did I just wake up and I just woke up at 9:04 about 6 minutes ago? Is this Bizarro World?
Presupposing that it's a specific distance that wouldn't work.
You don't really care. What? That's the most retarded nonsense I ever friggin' heard. You're just firing it.
That's what
Babs.
you just said. You said based
Number
on
one,
inverse
I don't even
square
have to stop. You don't understand free space path loss, number one. Number two, my whole point is that you don't know the medium that the light's going through. You don't know it. The whole thing's a just so story. It's over right there.
If you don't know what medium it's going through, how would you know how much power is required to send a
Oh
signal?
my God. You gotta be. Are you retarded, dude?
I'm just quoting what you said. This is
You're
what
just
you're
quoting
saying.
what I didn't say that.
I said that.
I didn't give his statement. No, I didn't.
So what are you saying then?
Oh, I'll tell you what. Rewind this and then try to figure it out afterwards.
He has got a point there, Babs. The signal loss over distance is an issue.
You don't even know what the distance is.
Exactly. So when are you going to be looking for your signal, assuming that you get one back?
And you don't know what the medium that it's going through is either.
Sending a signal and just waiting to see how long it takes to come back. You don't know whether it's going through a vacuum. You don't know how far away the sun is. You're just waiting for the signal to come back.
Really? And what's the signal to noise ratio?
Babs,
assuming that the
Hold on, that's a good question. What's the signal to noise ratio?
I don't know.
Oh, that's a problem. So this has got quite a few problems.
You've just stated one, signal to noise ratio.
No, another one. The freaking, it's not a vacuum.
Okay, it's not a vacuum.
Yeah.
What is the sun?
You're gonna have a lot of.
Let's try and extrapolate that. So what is given that it's not a sky vacuum? So what is the sky exactly, Babs? So we can factor this in. Can you tell us precisely what the sky is?
I didn't claim that I know what the sky is.
But we're going to be measuring stuff that's in that region, right?
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a problem if we don't know.
But why would we need to know what it is?
Because we need to know the medium that the light's going to be traveling through and returning through.
For the time. Otherwise, you're looking in the wrong place for your ping reflection.
Okay, let's assume that the medium is just atmosphere. There's no vacuum. What difference does that make?
No, but what is the sky? Hold on. Yeah, that's not an assumption. That's an absolute certitude. But what's the sky? The blue bit, not the atmosphere we're breathing. Obviously, I'm breathing in and out now. It's not blue. So what's the blue bit? Or the black bit at night? And why does it change colour?
I don't know.
Well, aren't we going to be measuring stuff in that? But we're measuring stuff there. We definitely need to know that, Babs.
We need to know what the things that we're looking at are, rather than what the medium is.
No, we need to know the medium. For sure, because it's going to be travelling through that.
To know both.
Yeah, it's going to be travelling through that to get there, and then travelling back through it to get back to us, isn't it? So we're definitely going to need to know that. And yeah, I appreciate you're saying we have atmosphere, but what about the blue bit or the black bit?
He's talking all through you. I'm going to shut you up, Babs.
Why are you talking through me, Babs?
I'm going to shut you up the next time you talk through.
So we'd need to know what the blue bit is, or the black bit is, or potentially why it changes colour. Because that's the medium that it's going to be travelling through and returning through.
Okay. Isn't it just travelling through the atmosphere?
Well, I've said this already. So is the atmosphere the blue stuff? Or the black stuff? Which one's the atmosphere? The blue stuff or the black stuff?
I feel like that's a trick question.
Not really. It's just the place that we're going to be pointing our lasers at or whatever. We're going to be measuring it within this instance. And we're saying we're going to point it at this black bit. And it's going to travel through the black. That's not the gas I'm breathing though, is it? So we need to know specifically what the sky is first.
Babs, why do you think in the scientific method there must be control variables?
This has nothing to do with science. This is a what is question. This has
No,
nothing to do with the
I
scientific method.
understand.
It's a what is question.
No, I get it. I'm
Jeez,
just
oh
saying.
man, you can't shut up, can
I was talking.
Not you, Babs.
I am.
I'm on mute.
Go ahead, finish, and then I'll finish.
Go ahead, you finish.
I'm on mute.
Okay.
I'm on
All
mute.
right.
I thought you already did. I thought you already finished.
I'm on mute.
I'm so glad.
Oh God.
It's so much fun this morning. So in the scientific method, which I wasn't comparing this to exactly what Babs was saying, but I'm saying for empirical evidence, you have to have the control variables in place. So Babs is saying, why can't you just point it out there? Well, because we don't know what's out there. We don't know the sky exactly what it is. So it'd be very difficult to come back with a empirical answer, not knowing all the variables. That's all.
Well, we could, point it and see what it would give us, but we have to keep in mind it might not give us, accurate, speeds.
Would it give us anything though?
Never
How do we
taken
know
a fire hose.
Then it's useless, Lemon Bird. Then it's entirely useless.
Well, it'll be a starting point.
Right.
But
It's back to the Emperor's New Clothes, isn't it? Asking the little boy what the Emperor needs to do, and the little boy goes, I mean, I could sew together some hankies. And everyone goes, well, that's just rubbish, really, isn't it, little boy? No offence, I'm not calling you a little boy either. And I'm not being racist by using the word boy, if you're black, which I don't know.
No, we need some room to laugh at that, really. Okay,
oh,
continue.
Boy.
Can I make an example?
But it's all good. But the thing is, if you've ever taken water in a fire hose, that's a concentrated, collimated beam, I guess you could say, of water, just like the lasers and light that they've used to get the speed of light in some of these experiments. But it'd be,
There are no experiments, and your analogy's flawed because the boy would have to be blindfolded, shooting the water hose in a specific direction, waiting to get hit by water, coming back.
Hold on, you missed out the stopwatch you'd be holding to time the splashback.
Well, saying that light travels in a collimated beam the way that, the water in a fire hose would, concentrated, versus just, in an ocean or dispersed throughout a medium like the moisture in the air is absurd because it's a concentrated beam that bursts forth from its, container essentially at a very high speed that is not representative of the way that it is normally expressed.
Are you making that analogy
and so
to
those
light?
speeds that would be generated from
Sorry,
that
sorry,
sort
just
of
sorry to interrupt.
This is baloney.
Sorry to interrupt. Are you making that analogy to light, like it's a stream?
Yes, because
But
they
it
have
isn't.
to have concentrated beams of light
it
for
isn't,
their
though.
interferometer experiments, which they use to generate the speed of light in some instances.
Yeah, there's a few
so
problems.
it may be fallacious.
Oh
to
God, will
assume
you ever
that
shut
light
up?
travels similar manner.
Does this ever have an end?
facetious.
Does it ever have an end? Is this analogy to light? Yes, it is. Okay, thank you. No, it isn't. Light doesn't behave like that. This is quite a problem. It's never come up before, but you've inadvertently stumbled across it. So there is no stream of light. It doesn't have an in-between. And when it comes to calculating speeds of things, that's a bit of a problem. Especially for us mere mortals to explain what light is doing. And when it comes to this particular aspect of light, it really does highlight, especially for me, just how ignorant we are about what light is. And we are pretty ignorant when it comes to what light is, I assure you of that. But my point is, there's no in-between bit. So in the same way as if you've got a hose of water, and you put your finger over the end and it goes, say, 10 meters away from you, there's a start, a middle, and an end. And the water that comes out of the end of the hose travels the entire journey from point A to point B, 10 meters away. All of it. It all travels that journey. But light doesn't do that. it doesn't come out like a beam. In other words, when you perceive a photon and it's hitting your eye, well, there's no stream between the lighthouse and you of light. It isn't actually functioning in that way. Now, I'm not going to even try and pretend to know how it does work, but there is no in-between bit. Do you see what I'm saying?
Are you saying that light doesn't move?
There's no journey for the light to take. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's not that it doesn't move. It's just that there's a start point and there's an end point, right? So Morgold Lighthouse. You're standing 34 miles away from that lighthouse. Not the light bulb, but we're in daytime looking at the building. You with me so far, Anthony? When you look at that lighthouse, there is no physical journey that the light's taken from point A to point B. There's no stream of light coming from that lighthouse in multiple millions of streams coming out in all directions, in every direction for everyone to pick up on. That's not how it works.
Really? I think it is.
Oh yeah, show me.
Yeah. How is light going to be a particle if that's the case? What you just put out there, that
excellent,
makes no sense.
Excellent question. That's an excellent
I'm not
question.
saying that it's a wave, though. To get
not.
that misunderstanding.
Oh, you ruined it. You had a good question. Now you've ruined it.
Not claiming it's a wave. Just saying it's going to be very difficult for that. What you described, if it's all one, it's a singular particle instead of.
That was where you had a good question.
Divisible beams, that could work.
Well, that's where you had a good question.
Yeah, I know.
But then you went on to say it was a wave, which it isn't.
I know. I wasn't saying that. I specifically said that I wasn't saying that. But it makes the concept of a indivisible particle unit of light very difficult with what you just explained.
But light is
if
a
it
particle.
has infinitely divisibility, however, that becomes a lot easier.
No, quanta, single particle. No.
You're so foolish.
You're doing really well and doing really badly within seconds, are we?
No, I wasn't. No, I did perfectly.
Infinite indivisibility? Are you freaking
infinite
on
divisibility? You know what I mean.
We're talking about quanta.
Infinite.
Yeah, quanta. Yeah, light unit. Sorry. Infinitely small.
Infinitely small and infinitely
There
divisible.
is no such animal as infinitely small.
Yeah, this is silly.
Really?
I agree with Nathan and Kieran on that.
Yeah.
Infinity is only a mathematical construct.
You never give me a chance to even properly explain that shit before you start rumpusing over me. It's time for me to leave.
Yeah,
again,
because it's bullshit.
because I know exactly where this is going.
Because it's bullshit. That's why.
You could just
Right?
stay
We ain't
around
gonna let you
and
ramble on
illuminate
for
us.
10 minutes about bullshit. Infinite indivisibility.
Well, isn't infinity a mathematical construct that can't exist in reality?
Exactly. It doesn't exist in math or reality.
Anyway,
Well, the thing is, it seems that we're coming at this from an atomistic perspective, where there is some sort of.
Shut up. Okay?
Oh, that was a bit over the
Just
top.
shut your mouth.
What was that for?
I'm tired of this lemon bird idiot. You're not speaking here. Go somewhere else. Now, we're well off the beaten path here with this radar. What is so difficult to understand that you're begging the question times about 6, right? With the biggest one being you don't know the medium in between you and what you're firing at. This isn't a radar gun we're using on the highway.
Is Babs still here?
Okay, we don't know what the medium is, so we're never going to be able to know what the distance of the sun is.
Bingo! Bingo bango.
That's why
Bingo!
Can I give an
But
example?
There has to be a way. Why can't we figure out what medium the sun is in?
Oh, I'm
Why
sure
can't
you've got
we
a lot of
figure that out?
questions, but we are just here to debunk the lies we've been told. I know there's a lot of questions that follow, and potentially there's multitudes of fields of research that open up when you find out you've been lied to, and the purveyors of science have given you pseudoscience and just so stories. Yeah, but without sounding like a cop-out, That's for the professionals who want to, explore that particular aspect of life. Now, that might well be you, Babs. And more power to you. I'd love to know. But what I don't want is the just so stories, and point out that they are just so stories and we're left with loads of questions without causing any offence. That's not our problem. You included in that. Now, I realise that you're still just going to have the questions, and I'm not trying to stop you airing them, but are we going to have any answers? When Anthony's like, well, we've got a P1 and a P1000 and what was the other thing, Anthony? A compass. You know what I mean?
Well, we can point out the things that are wrong with the globe model, but where are we going to get to if we're not trying to figure these things out on our own?
Nowhere. You've got to do that, and I applaud it. But it's like you're not doing that. You're going, well, what is that? Well, there's a rhetorical question that needs answering that might lead to you, in this instance, going forth to actually examine that aspect of our world where we were once lied to about it is extremely commendable. Far from me giving off the impression that I don't want people to do that. But the way you're phrasing it is, well, what is it then? To me. Like I give a shit. It's not my field, I don't know. I don't care. I'm not a sky expert. Nor do I particularly care. I've spent plenty of hours looking at the stars. Do I know what they are? No. Have I got any desires to go out and actually science it? No. None.
But what
we know what it's not.
Exactly.
What we can do is point out to people, what it's not, because we've been lied to.
People that look at the sky are about the only people that are experts. No one's a expert for looking at basketball games or looking at pool games or tennis games or anything else in the world. But if you're an astronomer, you're a sky expert. It's fucking crazy.
Can I give an example to Babs?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Babs, imagine that you have the means to shoot this radar pulse to the sun and wait for it to come back, but you end up not having enough power because nothing is coming back. Then you add some more power, you send a new signal, but then the new signal is not coming back as well. And at the end, you find out that as much as power you put, there is nothing coming back. So what do you do then?
You apply
more
to NASA.
power!
You apply to NASA, get shitload more funding, and build a bigger telescope.
Yeah, bigger amplifier.
That's not what happened. A signal was sent and a signal came back. You're saying that a signal did not come back. That's not what happened.
What did it hit, Babs? What did
And
it
how
hit?
did you know it's come back?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did it take
Maybe
6 minutes to get a receiving signal back from the radar range?
No, 6 minutes.
You need to present your case. Wait a second. He needs Babs. You're just shooting at stuff, throwing stuff at the wall, and see if it sticks. You need to present this, right? You need to present this proof. I mean, detailed. We want to know everything, soup to nuts. From when you woke up that morning to what you did right before you went to bed, everything in between. So you present it. Don't be throwing shit at a wall.
And with that, I'll say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who did tune in on the Nathan Oakley premiering stream for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. Be sure to check out nathanoakley.com and the Flat Earth Debate Forum to keep up to date with the community debate. I've been Nathan Oakley. Another massive thank you to all of today's Discord and G+ panels for making this after show possible. And I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!